The chamber stretched upward into darkness, so vast that the ceiling disappeared beyond the range of human eyes. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood alone on a platform that glowed with pale blue light, suspended above a pit that seemed to drop forever into the planet's burning core. All around him, rising in circular tiers that climbed toward the shadows above, sat the representatives of 847 alien species. This was the grand amphitheater of the Galactic Council. And Marcus was on trial for genocide. The air hummed with translation fields as hundreds of alien voices whispered and chittered, and sang in frequencies that made his teeth ache. Some of the beings watching him had eyes. Others had sensor arrays that glowed in the darkness. A few were clouds of gas contained in force fields, their thoughts projected directly into the minds of those around them. Marcus had never felt so small, so utterly alone, as he did standing in that circle of light, with the eyes of the galaxy upon him. Supreme Arbiter Quel'Themis spoke, and when it did, every being in the chamber fell silent. The Arbiter was a massive crystal sphere floating at the center of the amphitheater, pulsing with inner light. Inside the crystal, Marcus could see something moving, something that hurt to look at directly. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking perfect English directly into his mind. Ambassador Marcus Webb of Earth, you stand accused of destroying the Krell swarm. 17 billion? Galenius. Sentient beings erased from existence. The Council demands your answer. How do you plead? Marcus took a slow breath. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times during the 3-month journey to the Council homeworld. He knew what was at stake. Earth's future. Humanity's place in the galaxy. Everything depended on what he said next. Guilty, he said clearly. The amphitheater exploded with sound. Alien delegates shrieked and roared and broadcast their fury across every frequency. A massive tentacled being in the lower tiers began thrashing against its restraints. Somewhere high above, something let out a sound like tearing metal. Quel'Themis pulsed with violet light, and silence crashed down like a physical force. You confess to this crime without defense? The Arbiter asked. I confess to the facts, Marcus replied. Yes. Earth destroyed the Krell swarm. Yes. We used a weapon that erased them from existence. But I reject the accusation of murder. What we did was survival. A 4-armed alien in red robes stood up, pointing at Marcus with all 4 limbs. Lies. The Krell were peaceful explorers. They posed no threat to your primitive species. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice level. Ambassador Vec, the Krell consumed 18 inhabited worlds in the last century. They stripped those planets down to bedrock and converted every living thing into more. Krell, when they entered our solar system, they had already started processing Mars. We found evidence they had consumed human colonies in the Centauri system 3 months earlier. Dex mandibles clicked rapidly. You had no right to act alone. You should have petitioned this council for protection. We did, Marcus said quietly. 17 times. Each petition was rejected. The council told us Earth did not qualify for protection because humanity had not reached minimum technological standards. We were too primitive to matter. An uncomfortable silence spread through the chamber. Several delegates shifted in their seats or turned away from the conversation. So you built a weapon, Quel'Themis stated. A quantum cascade device. Technology that violates 47 galactic treaties. A weapon that does not simply kill, but erases targets from space-time itself. Do you understand the magnitude of what you have done? Marcus looked up at the crystal sphere. I understand that 8 billion humans are still alive. I understand that this council, which claims to protect civilized life in the galaxy, left my species to die. And I understand that you brought me here to punish Earth for having the audacity to save itself. Before Quel'Themis could respond, warning lights blazed throughout the chamber. A klaxon sound wailed across multiple frequencies. Delegates looked around in confusion as holographic displays appeared in the air. Flashing emergency alerts, a reptilian figure materialized as a hologram at the center of the amphitheater. Marcus recognized High Commander Raxes from the briefing materials. The military leader of Council forces looked terrified, Supreme Arbiter, the Cygnus line has fallen. The Devourers have broken through. They are in council space. Repeat, the Devourers are in council space. The word sent a wave of panic through the amphitheater. Even Marcus, who had only heard rumors about the Devourers, felt ice run down his spine. These were the enemy that the entire Galactic Council feared. The unstoppable force that consumed everything in its path. How long? Until they reached the core worlds, Qualthemis demanded. 6 months at their current rate of advance, perhaps less. Supreme Arbiter, they have adapted to all our defensive measures. Nothing we deploy slows them down. The barrier fleets are gone. All 47 fleet groups destroyed in less than a week. Several delegates were already rushing toward the exits. Others sat frozen in their seats, unable to process what they were hearing. The great and powerful Galactic Council, rulers of 1,000,000 worlds, reduced to panic in seconds. Qualthemis pulsed with dim, uncertain light. Then slowly, the Arbiter's attention returned to Marcus, who still stood calmly in the circle of light. You deployed a weapon that erases matter from existence, Qualthemis said slowly, against an enemy that numbered in the billions. And you won. Marcus said nothing, waiting. Could such a weapon work against the Devourers? The question hung in the air. Around the chamber, delegates stopped their panicked movements. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to focus on the single human standing in judgment. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Earth, about the 8 billion people counting on him. He thought about the Krell ships descending on Australia, about the desperate last stand humanity had made. He thought about what it had cost to build that weapon, and what it would cost to use it again when he finally spoke. His words were measured and deliberate. You dragged me across half the galaxy to stand trial for saving my species. You called us primitive and barbaric. You were preparing to punish Earth, maybe even destroy us, for refusing to die quietly. And now, with death at your door, you want to know if the monsters you fear can save you from the monsters you cannot stop. He paused, letting the words sink in. The quantum cascade device was our last resort. Building it nearly bankrupted our planet. Using it cost us resources we can never replace. But here's what you do not know. That weapon was not our only option. It was not even our most frightening one. Marcus stepped forward to the edge of the platform. Humanity has been killing itself for 10,000 years. We have turned killing into an art form, a science, a religion. We have weaponized everything from sharp sticks to the fundamental forces of physics. We have fought wars that lasted centuries and battles that ended in hours. And in all that time, in all those conflicts, we have learned one simple truth. There is no enemy we cannot find a way to defeat. Qualthemis pulsed urgently. Then you can help us fight the Devourers? Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That depends on whether you are ready to make a deal with the species even your gods would fear. Complete silence fell over the amphitheater. In that moment, everything changed. The trial was over. The negotiation had begun. And somewhere in the darkness above, in observation galleries hidden from normal sight, ancient beings stirred. The Guardians had been watching humanity for a long time. They had been waiting for this moment. They had been waiting to see what would happen when the galaxy ran out of options and turned to the one species that refused to accept the word impossible, Supreme Arbiter. Qualthemis floated in the center of the chamber, the crystal sphere pulsing with rapid bursts of light as it processed the implications of what Marcus had just said. Around them, delegates argued in 100 different languages, their voices creating a wall of noise that the translation field struggled to parse. Marcus remained standing in the circle of light, waiting. He knew better than to push. He had made his offer. Now he needed to let them come to the only conclusion that made sense. Finally, Qualthemis sent out a pulse of psychic force that silenced every voice in the amphitheater. State your terms. Ambassador Webb? Marcus had prepared for this moment. Full amnesty for Earth's actions against the Krell. Recognition of humanity as a sovereign council member species with all rights and protections, and complete technological independence. No restrictions on our research, no oversight on our development, no sanctions on what we choose to build. The chamber erupted again. Ambassador Vec rose from his seat, all four arms trembling with rage. Impossible! You would give these savages unlimited freedom to develop weapons that could tear reality apart. You left us no choice but to develop those weapons, Marcus shot back. When the Krell came, you abandoned us. We adapted. We survived. That is what humans do. Being made of living light drifted forward. Counselor Mira of the Luminari spoke in tones that translated to deep sadness. You do not understand what you ask. There are protocols, safeguards built over millions of years to prevent species from destroying themselves or others. Without those controls, we saved ourselves, Marcus interrupted. With those controls, you are about to go extinct? Choose. High Commander Raxes appeared again as a hologram, his scaled face tight with stress. Supreme Arbiter, the Devourers have entered the Antarius sector. Civilian evacuation is failing. We need a decision now. Right now. Qualthemis dimmed for several long seconds. When the Arbiter spoke again, the voice carried the weight of ages. There is precedent for what you request. Once before, this council faced annihilation. Once before, we sought help from a species we feared. The architects of Andromeda saved us, and in return, we granted them full autonomy. Marcus nodded. And they have been peaceful members of this council ever since, as Qualthemis agreed, because they understood what happened to the species that came before them. The ones who were not peaceful. They were removed. A chill spread through the chamber. Removed by whom? Marcus asked, though he suspected he knew. By the Guardians, Qualthemis said simply. Ancient beings who enforce laws older than this galaxy. They watch all species that reach a certain level of power, and they eliminate those who become threats to the fundamental order. Marcus felt the weight of unseen eyes upon him. Somewhere above, in dimensions he could not perceive, something was watching this conversation with great interest. Are you threatening me? He asked quietly. I am warning you, Qualthemis replied. If we grant your terms and humanity betrays that trust, if your species becomes the threat we fear, then you will not answer to us. You will answer to them. Marcus thought about Earth, about his species' long and bloody history. He thought about all the mistakes humanity had made, all the wars and genocides and preventable tragedies. But he also thought about the kindness humans were capable of, the loyalty, the fierce protection of those they considered their own. I will take that risk, Marcus said, because I trust my species. We are not perfect. We are violent and chaotic, and we make terrible mistakes. But we are also capable of incredible things. You give us what we are asking for, and we will give you what you need. A chance to survive. Qualthemis pulsed with decision. Very well. By emergency decree, I grant Earth full council membership and technological independence. Ambassador Webb, you have your terms. Now tell us how to fight. Marcus felt relief wash through him, but he did not let it show. We will need complete intelligence on the Devourers. Everything you know about their biology, technology, tactics, and patterns of movement. We will also need you to evacuate the inner core worlds immediately. You are asking us to abandon trillions of civilians. Someone shouted. Marcus turned to face the voice. I am asking you to save trillions by sacrificing the systems that are already lost. The Devourers are coming whether you evacuate or not. The only question is whether those civilians die where they are, or whether they live somewhere else. Make the hard choice now, or make the impossible choice later. The brutal honesty of the statement settled over the chamber like ash. How long do you need? Qualthemis asked. Marcus ran calculations in his head. Earth's military would need time to mobilize. The weapons would need to be manufactured. Intelligence would need to be analyzed and strategies developed. 6 weeks, he said. Give us 6 weeks to prepare, and then we go to war. As council delegates began implementing emergency protocols, Marcus was escorted from the amphitheater by security. But before he reached the exit, a section of wall dissolved to reveal a figure that made his breath catch. Archon Vels of the Eldest stepped forward from the shadows. The being wore a containment suit that barely held its form together, all sharp angles and darkness that seemed to absorb light. Looking directly at it made Marcus's eyes water. Impressive performance, human Vels, said the words forming directly in Marcus's mind. You negotiated from a position of weakness and emerged with everything you wanted. I negotiated from a position of necessity, Marcus replied. You needed us as much as we needed you, perhaps. But know this. We of the eldest have existed for 3 billion years. We have watched species rise and fall like waves on a shore. We have seen empires that spanned galaxies crumble to dust. And we have learned to recognize danger when we see it. Vels moved closer, and Marcus fought the urge to step back. Humanity's dangerous. Ambassador Webb. Not because you were strong, but because you refused to acknowledge your limitations. You look at an impossible situation and convince yourself it can be solved. That trait may save the galaxy, or it may doom us all. Then I suggest you hope for the best, Marcus said. Vels was silent for a moment. The Guardians are watching you, human. They have been watching your species since you first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. They allowed you to develop your weapons. They allowed you to destroy the Krell, and now they are allowing you to fight the Devourers. Ask yourself why. Before Marcus could respond, Vels dissolved back into shadow. Leaving him alone in the corridor, Marcus stood there for a long moment, thinking about ancient beings and cosmic tests and the weight of expectations he had just placed on his entire species. Then he straightened his shoulders and walked toward the communication center. He had a message to send to Earth, and 6 weeks to prepare for a war that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. Behind him, in spaces between spaces, the Guardians watched and waited. They had been searching for a species like humanity for eons. A species that would refuse to surrender, refuse to accept defeat, refuse to acknowledge the word impossible. Now, they would see if their patience had been rewarded or if they had made a terrible mistake. The answer would come soon. Enough, Admiral Victoria Kane stood on the bridge of the stellar carrier Indomitable and watched the Tartarus system materialize on the main display. Behind her ship, 47 more vessels dropped out of quantum slipspace in perfect formation. They were blocky and utilitarian, designed for function rather than the elegant curves that Council species favored. They were also the most dangerous things humanity had ever built. Status report. Kane ordered Commander James Okoye pulled up tactical data on his console. The Devourers have consumed 3 of 7 planets in this system. Tartarus 4 has been converted into a processing center. Scans show approximately 60,000 Devourer combat vessels, with numbers doubling every 72 hours. Kane studied the readings. The Devourers looked like massive biomechanical structures, each one the size of a city. They moved through space with purpose, stripping planets down to their cores and converting all matter into more Devourers. Time until critical mass? She asked. For weeks, Admiral. After that, they will have enough ships to overwhelm any conventional defense the Council can deploy. Kane nodded. They had 6 weeks total from Marcus's negotiation. That left 2 weeks of margin for when things went wrong. In her experience, things always went wrong. What about civilian evacuation? Last transport leaves Tartarus 2 in 18 hours. After that, the system is ours. The bridge fell quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. Tartarus would become a battlefield, and battlefields left nothing but corpses. Open a communication channel, Kane ordered. All frequencies. Let me talk to those things. Lieutenant Maria Reeves looked up in surprise. Admiral, the Devourers have never responded to communication attempts. Every species that has tried has been ignored. Kane smiled without humor. They have never met humans before. Open the channel. Communication array broadcast across every known frequency, saturating the Tartarus system with humanity's first message to the Devourers. For a moment, nothing happened. The massive biomechanical constructs continued their work, processing Tartarus's 4 into raw materials. Then one of them stopped. Sensor arrays turned toward the human fleet. And for the first time in recorded history, the Devourers responded. The message was pure data. It's translating to something close to language. Query. Identify. Kane activated the ship-wide broadcast. I am Admiral Victoria Kane of the United Earth Defense Force. I am here to give you one chance to leave this system. There was a pause as the Devourer processed this information. Analysis. Human biomass composition, unsuitable for processing. Neural architecture, too chaotic for integration. Conclusion. Insignificant threat. That is where you are wrong, Kane replied. We are not insignificant. We are the most dangerous thing you will ever encounter. Leave now, or I will prove it. Threat assessment. Minimal. Human technology inferior to Council. Standard by 43%. Defensive capability. Negligible. Response. Continue processing. The Devourer turned back to its work. Dismissing humanity as irrelevant, Kane's smile widened. Commander Okoye, did we get what we needed? Okoye was staring at his console with wide eyes. Admiral, when they responded, they opened a data connection. Our systems captured everything. Communication protocols, command structure, processing algorithms. It is all here. Excellent, Kane said. Arrogance is always the best opening. Deploy the mirrors. Cross the fleet. Small pods launched from every ship. They were barely larger than shuttles, moving with purpose toward the Devourer swarm. The enemy vessels did not react. To focused on planetary consumption to notice small, human craft, the pods reached optimal distance and activated. What happened next would be studied for generations. The mirrors did not attack with weapons or energy beams. Instead, they listened. Using the communication protocols, stolen from the Devourer's own response, the mirrors began. Broadcasting false data into the enemy network, the Devourers, operating on hive mind principles, trusted these signals as legitimate commands from their own command. Structure. They began to turn on each other. Devourer's ship attacked Devourer's ship. The processing center on Tartarus foreground to a halt as biomechanical constructs received contradictory orders. Confusion rippled through the swarm like a spreading infection. Then the real attack began. The Indomitable and her sister ships opened fire with rail cannons, launching projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. No energy shield could stop simple kinetic force delivered with that much momentum. Devourer vessels crumpled under the assault. Their exotic armor, meaningless, against basic physics applied with human precision, but Kane knew this was just the beginning. The Devourers would adapt. They always adapted. She was counting on it. Status on the Cascade generators? She asked. Charging, Okoye reported. 90 seconds to full power. Devourers were already recovering. Their hive mind identified the compromised units and cut them off from the network. New vessels launched from the processing center, these ones with updated protocols that could not be fooled by the mirrors. All ships fall back to defensive formation, Kane ordered. Let them chase us. As the Devourer swarm pursued in a massive wave. 60,000 ships, all focused on eliminating the threat that humanity represented. Exactly as planned. Cascade generators at full power, Okoye announced. Fire. Space itself screamed as the quantum cascade generators activated across all 48 human ships simultaneously. Reality was given a choice: continue existing or accept erasure. The Devourer vessels caught in the cascade field simply stopped being. Not destroyed or atomized, but deleted from existence as if they had never been there. 15,000 Devourer ships vanished in an instant. The remaining forces adapted immediately, spreading out to avoid the cascade fields. They were learning, adjusting tactics in real time. Deploy the walkers, Kane ordered. From the Indomitable's hangar bays, something new emerged. They looked like humans in armored suits, but the readings showed they were remotely operated drones. Each one could teleport directly onto enemy vessels, using short-range quantum displacement. The Council had deemed this technology too dangerous for practical use. Humanity had weaponized it in 18 months. The walkers appeared inside Devourer ships like ghosts, moving through corridors and chambers with purpose. Each one carried a payload designed to plant infiltration cores in the enemy command systems, The Devourers tried to stop them. They adapted internal defenses, created countermeasures, even detonated their own ships to prevent infiltration. But humanity had spent thousands of years perfecting close quarters, combat, and urban warfare. The walkers were those principles applied to space. Within an hour, 3,000 Devourer vessels had infiltration cores planted in their systems. Kane gave the activation command. The cores did not destroy the ships. They gave humanity control of them. 3,000 Devourer vessels turned on their fellows. The swarm descended into chaos, unable to distinguish compromised units from loyal ones fast enough to prevent catastrophic damage. Commander Okoye watched the tactical display with something close to awe. Admiral, the Devourers are withdrawing. They are abandoning the system. Let them go, Kane said. We want survivors to report back. We want the rest of the Devourers to know what happened here. The enemy fled into quantum slip space. Leaving behind wreckage and the smoking ruins of Tartarus IV, the battle had lasted 6 hours. Kane opened a channel to the Council fleet observing from the edge of the system. Battle Group Indomitable to Council Command. Tartarus system is secure. Devourer forces eliminated or routed. High Commander Raxes appeared as a hologram, his reptilian features showing raw fear. What are you? He whispered. Kane considered the question. What were humans? They were survivors, adapters, the species that had climbed to the top of their planet's food chain through intelligence and ruthlessness. We are what happens when you leave a species alone to face extinction, she replied. We are what you should have feared all along, and we are on your side. Remember that. She closed the channel. In observation galleries across Council space, alien leaders watched recordings of the battle with growing dread. Humanity had not just won. They had made it look easy, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. 2 weeks after the Battle of Tartarus, Marcus Webb sat in the strategic planning chamber with the Council's senior leadership. The room was smaller than the grand amphitheater, designed for actual work rather than ceremony. Around the circular table sat representatives from the 20 most powerful species in the galaxy. Supreme. Arbiter Quelthamus occupied the center position. High Commander Raxes provided military updates, and Marcus sat between them as humanity's voice. The holographic display showed the current state of the war. It was not encouraging. Despite the victory at Tartarus, the Devourers had adapted faster than predicted. They changed tactics, spreading forces thin across hundreds of systems rather than concentrating them. They were sacrificing efficiency for resilience, making it impossible for the Cascade weapons to achieve devastating results. Admiral Kane's face appeared on the display, as transmitted from the Indomitable. They are learning from every engagement. The mirrors no longer work because they isolated their command structure. The walkers are less effective because they compartmentalize their ship systems. And they started using quantum slip microjumps during combat, which makes cascade targeting nearly impossible. Counselor Myra shimmered with concern. Then we are back where we started. Human weapons were effective but not decisive. Not exactly, Marcus said. We knew they would adapt. That is their nature. But they are so focused on our tactics that they are missing something important, which is, Quelthamus asked. Marcus stood and manipulated the holographic display. The Devourers think like a swarm. Individual units do not matter, only the collective survives. So they are making their collective more resilient. But that is not how humans think. We do not need to destroy every Devourer ship. We need to make the swarm itself irrelevant. Ambassador Thek clicked his mandibles in irritation. Speak plainly, human. We do not have time for philosophy, and I will be direct, Marcus said. The Devourers consume resources and convert them into more Devourers. That is their strength and their weakness. They need matter to grow. What happens if we remove their food source? Raxes leaned forward. You propose we evacuate entire sectors? That is impossible. We would need decades. No, Marcus said. I propose we poison those sectors. Make them indigestible. He pulled up a map showing dozens of industrial worlds. These are heavy manufacturing centers. Shipyards, factories, mining operations. The Devourers have been targeting them for high-value resources. What if we do not evacuate them? What if we contaminate them instead? The chamber erupted in argument. You suggest we sabotage our own infrastructure? Someone shouted. I suggest we make it toxic to the Devourers, Marcus clarified. We seed those worlds with compounds that disrupt their conversion processes, isotopes that destabilize their biomechanical systems, chemical agents that corrupt their hive mind signals. The Devourers will not know until they have already consumed the contaminated material. Quel'Thamis pulsed thoughtfully. A slow poison. You turn their strength against them. Exactly, Marcus said. But it gets better. While they deal with systemic failures from contaminated resources, we hit them with psychological warfare. The Devourers do not have psychology, Mira objected. They are a collective intelligence. Every intelligence has breaking points, Marcus countered. We have been analyzing their behavior. The Devourers operate on predictive algorithms. They calculate probable outcomes and optimize for expansion. But what happens when outcomes stop making sense? What happens when their predictions fail consistently? He showed combat footage from Tartarus. Watch here. When we took control of those 3,000 ships, the swarm did not just defend itself. It panicked. For 17 seconds, their formation collapsed into chaos. 17 seconds of doubt in a hive mind that should be absolute. Archonvels materialized in the chamber, its presence making reality feel thin. You speak of breaking a collective consciousness that spans billions of units across thousands of light years. No conventional attack could achieve this. Marcus smiled. You are right. No conventional attack? That is why we are going to teach the Devourers to be afraid. The chamber fell silent. Fear is a survival mechanism, Marcus explained. It helps organisms avoid threats. But the Devourers have never needed fear because they have never encountered a threat they could not overcome. We are going to change that. He brought up data on neural warfare drones. Thousands of small units designed to infiltrate Devourer networks and inject false sensory information. Not command overrides, but something more subtle. Data designed to make them perceive threats that did not exist. We make them see ghosts, Marcus said. We make them waste resources, defending against attacks that never come. We make them question their sensors, their assessments, their collective judgment. And while they chase shadows, we hit them where it matters. Raxi studied the plan with his tactical mind, processing implications. This is disturbing. You weaponize their decision-making processes, thumbs. LVs. Welcome to human warfare, Marcus replied. We have been doing this to each other for millennia. We know how to break an enemy's will because we spent thousands of years learning how to break our own. Quel'Thamis dimmed thoughtfully. If the Devourers adapt to these tactics as they adapted to everything else, then we adapt in return, Marcus interrupted. That is the difference between humanity and every other species here. You develop a weapon, test it, refine it, then deploy it. We develop weapons in the field and refine them in real time. We are not trying to fight a perfect war. We are trying to win, and perfection was never required for victory. Ambassador Thex stood abruptly. And when this war ends, when the Devourers are defeated and humanity no longer has an enemy, will you turn these tactics on us? Marcus met the alien's eyes without flinching. That depends on whether you remember this moment. You came to us desperate. You granted us autonomy because you had no choice. When this is over, you will have a choice again. Honor our agreement and treat Earth as an equal, or try to control us again. He leaned forward. Choose wisely. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Quel'Thamis pulsed with decision. Humanity's plan is approved. Admiral Kane, you have authorization to proceed. As the meeting ended, Archonvels approached Marcus. You play a dangerous game, human. You show them your weapons, believing it builds trust. But all you do is teach them to fear you more. Fear is not the opposite of trust, Marcus replied. Fear is what makes trust necessary. They need to fear what we could do to appreciate what we choose not to do. Vels laughed, a sound that rippled across dimensions. Perhaps the Guardians want exactly that. A species that refuses limitations. One that looks at impossible situations and says, "Watch me do it anyway." Marcus left the chamber and found Admiral Kane waiting. The council approved everything, he told her. "Good," Kane replied, "because we already started deploying the neural warfare drones." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You know that is exactly the behavior that makes them nervous, right?" Kane grinned. "Then they should have thought of that before asking humans to save them." The neural warfare campaign began 3 days later across 47 star systems simultaneously. The Devourers first noticed something wrong in the Helios expanse. Their ships began detecting human vessels that were not there. Phantom signatures appeared and vanished, always just outside weapons range. The swarm sent scouts to investigate. Those scouts found nothing. But the signatures persisted. In the Sigma Draconis cluster, Devourer ships started receiving conflicting sensor data. Some units registered massive fleet movements. Others detected nothing. The hive mind tried to reconcile the contradictions and found itself trapped in computational loops, burning processing power on problems that had no solution because the problems were not real. The neural warfare drones were doing exactly what Marcus predicted. They were teaching the Devourers to doubt themselves. Admiral Kane watched from the Indomitable's bridge as effects rippled through the enemy network. Devourer response time is increasing across all sectors. They are hesitating before making tactical decisions. Average delay is now 7 seconds and climbing. 7 seconds might not sound like much, but in combat, it was an eternity. And the Devourers were learning that hesitation was fatal. The contamination protocols showed results too. Industrial worlds seeded with destabilizing compounds were being consumed, and effects spread through the Devourer network like disease. Biomechanical constructs failed. Ship systems degraded. Perfect efficiency deteriorated into chaos. But the Devourers were still adapting. They began isolating contaminated units, cutting them off before corruption spread. They developed filters for sensor data, trying to distinguish real threats from phantom ones. Marcus had counted on this. Phase 2, he ordered from Earth's Strategic Command. Deploy the Harbingers. The Harbingers appeared in systems the Devourers had already consumed, materializing without warning. They were not warships. They were self-replicating factories designed to consume local resources and produce more of themselves. They used the same principles as the Devourers, but faster and more efficient. The Devourers tried to destroy them. For every Harbinger eliminated, 3 more appeared. They did not fight back. They simply consumed and replicated, turning entire systems into industrial complexes with one purpose: outproducing the enemy. Within 2 weeks, the Devourers faced resource crisis. Systems they needed were being consumed by humanity's Harbingers. They were being outcompeted in the very strategy that made them unstoppable. Hi, Commander Raxes watched the strategic display with horror and amazement. They are not just fighting the Devourers. They are replacing them.
Counselor Mira shimmered with concern.
What happens when the Harbingers run out of resources? They shut down, Marcus explained. Each Harbinger has a built-in expiration date. 3 months after activation, they deactivate and disassemble. We are not conquering these systems. We are denying them to the Devourers long enough to break their expansion. And if the shutdown protocols fail? Qualthemus asked. Marcus was quiet. Then we destroy them ourselves. But he knew the risk. The Harbingers were humanity skating the edge of becoming what the galaxy feared. If protocols failed, Earth would have unleashed something worse than the Devers. It was a calculated risk, the kind humans specialized in. The war reached its end in the Orion Nebula, where the Devourers had established their primary hub, a massive structure the size of a moon. Coordinated the entire swarm, Admiral Kane led the assault personally with humanity's full fleet against the most defended target in known space. The battle should have been suicide. The Devourers had 50 million ships defending the hub. Humanity brought 3,000. But numbers were not everything. The neural warfare drones had spent weeks mapping the Devourer network, identifying critical systems that could not be isolated because they were essential to swarm function. They had found a vulnerability. The hive mind itself could be WEAPONIZED. Kane did not attack the hub directly. Her ships launched quantum resonators calibrated to match Devourer neural network frequency. Then they activated them all at once. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The resonators created feedback in the hive mind, amplifying every signal until the network drowned in its own traffic. 50 million. Devourer ships received 50 million contradictory orders simultaneously. The swarm tore itself apart. Ships collided. The hub began consuming its own defenses. Biomechanical constructs shut down, unable to process the information flood. Perfect coordination became their downfall. In less than an hour, the Orion hub was destroyed. The central coordination of the entire Devourer swarm was gone. The remaining Devourers scattered across the galaxy found themselves without direction. Individual units continued operating, but the unified threat was broken. The war was over. Marcus stood before the Galactic Council once more. The amphitheater was packed with delegates showing expressions from gratitude to terror. Supreme. Arbiter Quelthemus spoke with genuine emotion. Ambassador Webb, on behalf of the Council and all member species, we extend deepest gratitude. Humanity has saved galactic civilization. Applause erupted. But Marcus did not smile. There is a condition to our continued cooperation. He said. The applause died. Earth has demonstrated our value as allies and our capability as potential threats. Some of you are relieved. Others are terrified. So let us address that fear directly. Activated a display showing Earth and surrounding space. Humanity wants security, prosperity, and freedom to determine our future. We do not want to conquer the galaxy or impose our values, but we will not tolerate being treated as second-class members. We have earned our place, and we expect to be treated accordingly. And if we refuse, someone asked, then you will learn why the Devourers failed, Marcus replied coldly. Not because our weapons were better, but because we understand that survival is not about being strongest. It is about being willing to do whatever it takes. Archon Vels materialized at the chamber's center. The human speaks truth, but not complete truth. The Guardians allowed humanity to rise for a reason. The galaxy is stagnated. Species reach certain levels and stop. But the universe does not care about stability. It tests and destroys. The Devourers were only the latest test. Vels turned to Marcus. Humanity represents something new. A species that refuses to stop evolving, refuses to accept limitations. You are chaotic and dangerous. You are also exactly what this galaxy needs to survive future challenges. The ancient being addressed the full council. The Guardians have made their judgment. Humanity will be granted full autonomy and protection. But you are now bound to defend this galaxy. Future threats will come, and you will be called to face them. This is the price of freedom you have earned. Marcus considered this. They had fought for autonomy but were being conscripted as defenders. It was not what they asked for. It was exactly what humanity had always been. We accept, he said. The vote was called. It passed overwhelmingly. As delegates left, Vels approached Marcus. You understand what you agreed to? We agreed to do what we would have done anyway, Marcus replied. Humans do not run from fights. Even fights you cannot win. Especially those. Vels was silent. Then it spoke words that would echo through history. The universe is full of predators, Ambassador. But only humanity looked at an uncaring cosmos and decided to become the apex predator. The Guardians see this. They approve. But remember, every apex predator eventually meets something stronger. Marcus smiled. There is only one way to find out.
That's
6 months later, Earth's embassy opened on the Council homeworld. Admiral Kane was promoted to High Commander of Joint Defense Forces. The Harbingers shut down as programmed, and in darkness between galaxies, something ancient stirred. Something that had been waiting for a species bold and dangerous enough to draw its attention. The Guardians watched. From higher dimensions with interest, humanity had passed the test, but the real test was just beginning. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5